Welcome to listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan, a podcast about the art and hobby of miniature painting. I'm Mike.
And I'm Dan. Thank you for joining us on our continued journey to become better, braver, and happier painters.
Before we get into the main part of the episode, we'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping. We'll be taking a break during the month of February. We're coming up on a year anniversary of the show, and we've kind of been going nonstop since. So we need to take kind of a break. We'll still produce episodes and content in January, especially since we'll have our anniversary episode, but we won't be back after the anniversary episode until March 2021. So thank you for being with us all this time, those of you listeners, etc. But I need a break.
So this episode will mostly be an interview with artist and teacher Trovarion. But first, we would like to share some of what we have on our desk. Mike, what you got going on?
So, Dan, I'm finishing up a Christmas present for one of my nieces. I didn't quite meet the deadline of Christmas because I ran into some shoulder issues, so I wasn't able to paint for a little bit over a month, actually. I've also got a Highlander model from Nocturna that I got from a Kickstarter that I've started prepping and working on. And I need to finish my Sequitur Prime. That was a non-metallic metal test. So that's kind of where I am as far as stuff on my desk. But I do have some fun stuff from Christmas, though. I did get a few great things. Like I got the new version of the Puppeteer from Mindwork Games. The original piece is just the Puppeteer and a puppet. The new one is this whole huge 75 millimeter diorama thing, and it's just gorgeous and a bit overwhelming when I look at it to think about how I would even approach painting it. So, but it was pretty awesome. I also got a steampunk Sir Lancelot from Demented Games. Now, doing that episode on steampunk really kind of got me interested in some of the miniatures. And this Demented Games is a board game for the game Twisted, I believe it's called, and it's a steampunk kind of skirmish game. They have one single collector's item miniature right now, which is a resin 54 millimeter Sir Lancelot. Got it for Christmas. The details are gorgeous. I'll also throw out a little shout out to the company too, because I guess they were a little delayed in mailing it when my wife ordered, so they threw in another miniature.
Oh, well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was totally awesome. I also got the Army Painter Masterclass dry brushes, which I want to try out here shortly, and maybe if I can get to it, I'll do a little review for it. But that was kind of it. But that's okay. Oh no, I'm sorry, and I lie. I got a mic stand, which is what I'm using right now, and I'm really enjoying actually having a desk microphone stand and being able to hook up the windshield, etc. to it. So it's really nice. It stops me. My old setup, if I moved my left hand, I would knock everything over. This way, I don't knock anything over when I move. So, what about you, Dan?
I really didn't get anything hobby-wise for Christmas. I ordered I requested a Iwata Highline, and I got some kind of car airbrush, industrial size, so I could paint everybody's models, or at least put a base coat on everybody's models in the world fairly quickly. But I don't think I'll be doing many eyes with them. So that's you can only show so many pictures and point them out so many times on websites and give links, and yeah, so I'm just kind of like giving up on that. I don't think I'm ever going to get it, so I'll probably just have to save my own money and purchase it on my own someday.
So you got an industrial strength airbrush.
Yeah, with like the one with the metal pint frickin' holder thing. I'm like, what the? And a trigger and gun grip and everything. I'm like, what the crap is this thing?
Maybe a new career change for you. You're going to start working for Mako or something.
I know I'm going to start like painting cars and stuff. I put flames on this. Let me fade it over here. Oh, let me shake my paints up. Boy, this is going to cost a lot of money for Citadel paints. I need 15 gallons. So, so, so yeah. So instead of doing that, I concentrated on painting. So I've been doing an awful lot of painting. I was priming all my Space Marines black because I want to paint. Well, let's see. I have what do I have black? I have oh yeah, my Dark Angels, which are my 30K ones, so they're all black, and I prime everything black. And oh yeah, my Legion of Damned. So I went digging around and found some old Legion of Damned. So I wanted to try to bring those back up and using my scale 75s because by the time you guys hear this, I'll have the whole entire collection of paints. I've been buying like two or three every week or so, slowly building up. And then Mike gave me some green, filled up my green ones and my purple ones. So now I only have like one or two left that I have to purchase. So I'll be doing that here soon. So I wanted to do some painting with it, and I liked the red that they had. So I started working with those. I'm like, hey, these are blending fairly good. So I was like, oh, I could probably start doing my Legion of Damned again. So I'm going to try to finish up this army here. I got about 40 guys I need to do. So I'm going to start
40
working on
Legion of the
them.
Damned?
Yeah, yes. I have
Damn.
so many. And I'm out looking for more. So if anybody has any they don't want,
Yeah,
I'll add them.
I have a resin one if you want it. I have a fail cast. I mean, fine cast resin one.
Oh, the fine cast resin ones. Oh boy,
Actually,
those
he's in
are.
really good shape. I didn't see many bubbles on him or anything.
We'll see. We'll see.
And I
We'll
have a
see.
couple of metal. I think I have a couple of metal ones. Like I have the sergeant holding the skull and a chainsword, and he's
Oh, you have
helmetless.
Sergeant Centurius.
Is that who that is?
Yes, it is. He's one of these rare guys, rarer guys.
I bet you
I got
have
like,
three of them.
yeah, I have about three of them.
How did I know that?
I got one in the box, one that's almost painted, and one that is painted. That was my first dead skin toned guy that I painted. Was his
Nice.
face. So yeah, so I've been working on that. I actually put my BattleTech stuff away for a little bit, just to cleanse the palette. And I was working on my sisters again with the ivory armor with the bluish and purple cloth. So I've been going back, getting some of that knocked out, and of course working on my 30K guys. I have 30 of them that I'm working on. So spray painting them all black was fairly easy. But now I'm doing their weapons, and I was fading. I was doing some practicing my glazing. So it's fading from black to like an orange color, but going through red. So it's been fun. It's been a what would we call that? A intent, not intentional. I don't know what we call it. I've been practicing, so I'm gonna have fun with that. So I'll know how to paint red here pretty soon, and I'll move
Intentional
on to
practice, is that what you were going for?
kind of. There's another word for it, not intentional, but another one, and that's all right because it's late at night and I haven't drank enough yet. So that's real. Let's see, is that it? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's those three armies is enough. I mean, pretty much all black on all of them except for my sister's. That's an opposite color, but I just want to clean my desk off because I got so much shit, and so I have egg cartons. That is, I store all my guys in egg cartons, and I have probably about 15 of those because each egg holder can hold one figure, and that's how I store them all. So when I take them off all the sprues, I paint everything in sub-assemblies, and then I put them together. So I know which guys go into which little egg hole, and I put them in places in there. So I do my batch painting and everything. So yes, I wanted to get rid of some of those because it's taking off a lot of space, and I reorganized my paint drawer. I did that too.
Nice.
Let's see.
Oh, I
Yeah,
forgot about two things I got too. So remind me at the end when you're done.
okay, yeah. So, anything that yeah, I didn't get anything for Christmas at all. My wife got me a bottle of whiskey, but I don't drink, like legally drink. And let's see, what else did I get? Stuff I don't need.
I think that the whiskey and the combination of the industrial airbrush that has got trouble written
Maybe
all over it.
I could probably I could use the whiskey to spray with the airbrush and strip everybody's figures. So after I paint the figures and we don't like that color and it's just too goopy because so much paint has come off on them, kind of lost the detail, I can go back over it with the whiskey and that would hopefully strip them all. And then we can start over again.
That's the kind of
That
airbrush
sounds,
you go, what are you trying to paint or put out a fire? My God.
yeah, that won't work. That's a stupid idea. So no, I handed it back to my mom and said, thanks, but I really don't need this as much as I thought I needed it. So, yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, now that I think about it, I got to work and I didn't get a whole lot for Christmas. So, yeah, I'm just winding up 2020, 2 thumbs up.
Well, at least you did get. I got you some beef jerky. I mean,
I did, and you know what? My kids love it. They are very excited about the beef jerky. I can't remember what flavors they like, but they're just like, holy crap, that one is good. And that one is good. And they're resealable packs too.
nice. Well, that's good.
So actually, yeah, thanks. That's the best Christmas present I got this year.
Well, I'm at least glad I gave you the green paint set too, because at least I know that's going to be
Yes.
just for you. Just for
Yes,
you.
and I didn't get a chance to play with the colors too much, but when I go to my 40K Dark Angels, I'll because I have, let's see, I I went through and reorganized all my Dark Angels that I had. So I have a big box of the 30K guys. So I have 30 on the sprues, so I haven't touched them, and then I have the 30 or 40 that there's 30 that I'm working on right now. And then I went through and found all the ones from the Dark Vengeance set.
Oh,
I've
nice.
got I have 8 squads of those guys. Half of them are painted, half of them are not. So, I was like, holy shit, where the hell did I get all these things? I was like, I only bought one, and I think those guys might be painted. So I'm like, holy shit, I gotta like cut all these pieces up and I gotta like reposition them because I can't paint the same freaking.
Well, I think you got Dark Vengeance guys from me too, though.
I got a couple from you, but literally, I put them. I lined them all up, and and played war with them on the floor. But then I organized them into which squads were actually fully painted. So I got all those guys into one point, and I try to match, what color greens were going together. And then I have a bunch of them that were not, and I put them in Ziploc bags so that I can rebase them all and do any touch-up paints to them and stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, so honestly, I have no idea how I got so many freaking Dark Angel Space Marines. And then so that's what I get for like digging through all my boxes. Not even all my boxes, just a couple boxes. And I found like first generation rhinos, and I have a whirlwind that's made out of metal. And I got, okay, that's enough of me bitching and moaning. Yeah, Dan didn't get anything for Christmas besides jerky and green paint from mom.
Well, I forgot to tell you, or not. I know because you got me the Vallejo paint stand for my desk, and I appreciate that. Actually, it's in use right now. I've set all up my paint. I set my paints all up to work on a couple of projects,
Good.
and so
I hope it works for you. I really dig mine. I use mine all the time, even though I have the Desk Wizard one. I have this one off on the side as my other, like, a storage set instead of my immediate like project one that I use my Desk Wizard for. But yeah, I love mine. That was the first one that I purchased for myself years ago, and I love it, man. So I
awesome.
hope it gets lots of use and it comes in handy for you.
Yeah, it's already got paints in it. So yeah, thank you very, very
Cool.
much.
Yeah.
And the other thing I got was I got a box of Palanite Enforcer or Subjugators from the Necromunda game from Games Workshop. Now, I haven't been painting a lot of Games Workshop stuff lately, but back in the day when I was kind of meddling a little bit in the hobby in college, I kind of fell in love with these arbitrator guys, or Adeptus Arbites. They were basically like the underworld police officers, and they carried shotguns and stuff like that. So really cool. They even had robot dogs. I probably actually have about 20 of those models, but they're never coming back. And so the closest thing that they're kind of the new version of them are these Palanite enforcers and subjugators, etc. And so I got a box of those because I wanted to paint those up. And so I'll probably start that in February when we're on break. But
I was just thinking about that. I was earlier today. I was thinking about trying to find some old Judge Dredd figures, and that just reminded me of when you said that. It's reminded me of those guys, or it reminds me of him, kind of, sort of.
well, I think Manic Games makes a Judge Dredd game.
GW did too a long time ago.
Yeah, I remember that they had a Western game at one point too.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny.
Apparently they had a fantasy game too, but
that
one went away.
I guess. But all right. Well, I guess that with all that behind us, I guess we should introduce our interview.
Yes.
So one more thing before we go into our interview for this week's episode. Dan and I would like to wish everybody a happy holidays. We hope you had a wonderful Christmas or a happy Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. And also, we wish you all a wonderful new year. Hopefully, 2021 will be so much better than 2020. But thank you so much for letting us be a part of your painting journey. Dan and I are pleased to present an interview with Trovarion, an award-winning artist, teacher, and all-around great guy. He is also our next stop on apparently our Listening to Paint Dry World Tour in Austria. So without further ado, we welcome Trovarion to the show. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for the invitation. Hopefully we can talk about some interesting things.
Absolutely. And it's, it's really important that one of the main focuses that we have is sharing artists and letting people hear their journeys. And one of the things we try to focus on is how even the most amazing artists have the same kind of common stories that a lot of beginning painters have, and that they were all these amazing artists were there at one point too.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing that a lot of people don't really realize. We are super deep into our journeys, and yeah, a lot of us do have like decades of painting experience, but that doesn't mean that we too were super crappy when we started out. So
well, let's start there. Can you talk to me a little bit? I know you've talked about this in other places and such, but can you give our listeners just a little taste of what started your hobby journey?
Yeah, so it's always a stupid idea to say that, but I think I'm already boring people a lot with that story. But I mean, I just happened to see miniatures at a certain point in time. I think I was like 20 or something. I just started university, and I had a bit of a relapse with Magic the Gathering. So I was just collecting cards, and I just walked into a store. And before that, I knew that miniatures existed, but I never was into D&D, and I never heard of Warhammer really. I walked into a store and some guy opened Mage Knight boosters, and that was like a card booster. You just got random pre-painted miniatures to be able to play a game. That was pretty quick and easy to get into, but he just happened to open the rare variants of it, and they happened to be a cast in see-through resin, and that was just really interesting to see, and I was just hooked instantly. Yeah, I played that game for a while, and then I realized they're pre-painted and they actually look crappy, and there must be a way to make them better. And from then on, I just started to paint. Gone into other miniature games, not games, but companies like Warhammer or Games Workshop and Confrontation, and eventually I just focused on painting because I don't like dice games. So
So I guess my next question with this is kind of, so you went from that started out with the joy of painting. What made you decide to want to teach others how to paint?
it's always a hard question to answer, because how do you get into teaching? I guess because I'm a teacher by trade too, or I don't know how you say it. So I studied to be a biology and psychology teacher. So I guess I always just wanted to try and spark interest for the things that I'm interested in. Guess I was always hoping that because I'm really interested in things, I could maybe spark the same joy and I guess interest in other people for the things I do. So yeah, it's the same with biology and science, and it's the same with painting. I just really enjoy the things I studied for, and that I have experience with, and I just hope that to be able to spark that joy in other people, I guess.
And see, that's one of the things Dan and I always talk about is every time we run across people that are just amazing teachers, we find out a lot of times they have a teaching background like you. And so it actually, the way you teach, it makes a lot of sense that you have a teaching background as well. So, because there are a lot of artists that teach classes that don't know really how to be a teacher per se. And so your skill level shows in how you conduct your videos. And Dan used to be a patron of yours, and he always talks about how valuable your videos are because they look like they come from a perspective of a teacher. So it's very impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's not actually that hard. You just have to think about what a student knows and what he cannot know and what he needs to know. Yeah, just put yourself into their shoes, and try to answer the questions that they might have beforehand, and just think in along those lines.
If you don't mind me deviating a little bit from some of the questions, you had mentioned that you have, the science and biology passion. Has that spilled over into your miniature world, painting world at all?
I don't think so. Maybe a little bit. And so if you do science, you have to be observative of whatever you do. You cannot just do a recipe and not react to things that happen spontaneously, or take the things that happen spontaneously into consideration. Because how do you find new things? You just try the old things, and some things happen, accidents happen, happy mistakes happen. Yeah,
Right.
and funny.
I see I have another Bob Ross disciple here on the phone with me.
I mean,
Definitely.
you just have to drop the memes occasionally, because that's what content is about.
Right. So was there ever a technique as you were trying to build your painting skills? Was there any technique that you felt was particularly harder than others to learn?
Yeah, so that's a thing that is really difficult to communicate to people. But if you can, then try to not think in techniques. It's hard to understand that sentence when you present a new painter with that sentence, but I don't really think in techniques. Maybe an example is when I paint what I call, or the miniature community calls, volumetric highlights, where you take the shape of something and you put your own interpretation in it, and how light interacts with that shape. You don't really think, okay, if I dry brush this with a 5-degree angle, is this going to come out right? Or how much dilution do I have to put into my paint mix so that it becomes a glaze or a layer or whatever? You just do whatever the situation needs. So if I want a really bright opaque highlight, what am I doing? I'm just putting a really saturated, I'm taking a saturated color in an opaque consistency, and I just put it there. And now I have a border between a darker and a brighter color. So what am I doing? I'm just trying to blend that together. And how do I do that? Am I just using a glaze? Probably not. I might start with a glaze, so putting an opaque layer over a hard edge like that is going to, pull it together a bit. But I can do the same thing with just stippling and leaving a bit of texture, and leaving it to your brain to blend it together. So at that point, you cannot distinguish a single techniques or single techniques from the whole application of paint, because you would just limit yourself if you said, okay, I can only do this kind of brush stroke because I need to do this technique. So I guess we could say it was a bit hard in the beginning to unlearn the techniques, or unlearn to think in techniques. That was maybe the hardest technique to learn.
No, that actually is a great way of putting it, because I know you have that there as a painter who's trying to move past mediocrity, like myself. I constantly get stuck saying, okay, well, I don't glaze very well, so I need to practice glazing, and then I don't get anything accomplished. Really, I'm just, you know what I'm saying? Like, you kind of get stuck, and if you're not doing it right, and instead I get caught in kind of my own head with worried about the execution of a technique instead of really just kind of putting paint on a model. And so I totally see what and appreciate what you're saying about kind of unlearning. It's kind of like it almost is like if you watch YouTube and such, it's how, like, every video is a different technique focus. And so you kind of get focused on that way of learning how to paint. So thank you for sharing. That's actually a very good point.
And I mean, you mentioned you're trying to practice glazing. I mean, no, it was just an example, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with practicing the application of really thin paints to create the smooth gradient. You just need to not stop at this, and continue to think in the bigger picture, that might just come in handy at a point where you need to do exactly this, but you're not limited to this. So you can take this, what you practiced here, and apply it in multiple ways to, in other situations. I think that's the important thing, to not stop at just practicing this as a singular technique.
So your recent video about your creative process, which I have to tell you, I particularly appreciated, because I'm always interested in how painters approach their projects. You talked about what your steps are and how you go through it. How important is it for a painter to understand their own process?
I don't think it's important at all, because for a long time there's two layers to that. I was just doing whatever looked good, and I didn't think about it at all. The only time I thought about it was if I was unhappy. Then I thought about, okay, and I think that is the important part. When you're unhappy, you should analyze your process and see what's going wrong, and change it around to get the result that you want, and to get to a result that you enjoy and that you're happy with. So as long as everything is smooth sailing, I'm not sure if you really need to analyze your process. But whenever you feel like, okay, something's wrong, I don't like that, you need to change something, then it's good to analyze.
Also, you talked about in that process video about having when you approach a project, you have to decide whether you go kind of more artistic, or whether maybe technical would be a word to use to describe it. Which do you tend to find yourself to be on the more artistic side or the more technical side?
I think it's a mix of both. I don't want to sacrifice either too much. I guess you could say I am more interested in composing a figure that has interesting textures and interesting color interactions in a more traditional way. I guess it could be viewed as a more traditional Games Workshop paint shop approach, even though it is a tiny bit beyond edge highlighting. But I still like to have clean elements. Yeah.
I don't know if I will say this. I wouldn't say that your techniques are a little bit above GW Edge highlighting. I mean, you're an absolutely brilliant painter, and I enjoy. Your work is constantly. I look at your pictures for inspiration. So that's being very modest on your point to say it's a little bit above GW's Edge highlighting.
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. It is just that I think there is a lot of other painters that just drop the more traditional things in favor of just trying to push an artistic vision more than I do. I just really like to I just like harmonizing colors and well-rounded colors on a miniature, and I'm not that interested in, for example, pushing a really hard highlight from the left, so all the right area of the miniatures is in the shadow. That's kind of boring to me, because at that point I everything that is in the shadow just for me disappears, and it makes sense because that's what you want to transport and show. Because if something is in a shadow, it's disappearing, it's taking a back seat in the composition. To me, that is just because, to me, painting is a 3D medium. You're going to be able to pick up the miniature, and I feel like I want the miniature to look nice and interesting when you turn it. And I feel like all these hard edges, hard light approaches and backlight approaches and all of that, that's really nice on pictures. But I'm working in a 3D medium, and I don't want to use something that is, to me, more a 2D technique. If that makes sense at all.
That makes a total. It's that conversation that constantly happens between realism and believability. It's also a great that actually is a great segue in to kind of my next set of questions, because I'm going to be a little bit more specific. But before I do those, I do want to ask you about how the Mythbusters with you and Vince started. Vince actually has been a guest on the show in the past as well, and I've been fortunate enough to take some classes from Vince. But how did that get? Can you talk a bit how that got started?
I mean, Vince and I do resonate on a lot of levels in our teaching approaches, and I guess to a certain point in our painting approaches. So, whenever you see someone online or posting something online and you're like, yep, I agree with that. And so you kind of gravitate towards each other. It's not like we're best buddies or something like that, because I mean, we do live on different continents. But I guess whenever we come together, it's a good chemistry. We are usually agreeing with each other, which could be a pro and a con, I guess. But yeah, I don't actually remember why. I just wanted to interview him for the channel. I thought maybe because he has a lot of stuff and knowledge to offer, and I felt like he was a bit neglected by the YouTube audience. But that has different reasons too that we can get into if you want to, but doesn't necessarily answer the question. But I just wanted to see if there was an audience that would be interested in our approach, and my approach to editing and to make video making is a bit different than his. So I just wanted to have a conversation and pull him maybe into editing his videos more.
you guys have a great rapport. It's definitely you can tell there's mutual respect, and you honestly, when you ask each other questions and talk to each other, you actually do want to hear what the other person has to say, which is makes it even more interesting, you know?
Yeah, and I guess we also have a bit of a same humor level. It's not that slapsticky type of humor. It's more the dry humor that has to whether the listener has to keep listening to not miss anything. I guess that's our type of humor, so that is a good thing to resonate with that. But ultimately, how the myth busting started is at some point in that interview, he says, "Oh, that's another myth we busted." And whenever you and I come together, that's the thing we do. And I mean, at that point, it's a given to do that thing more often, I guess. And the idea was that we agreed that there are some misconceptions that prevail. And I don't know, whenever I say bro science, some people don't like to hear that for some reason. But it always reminds me of bro science. It's just something that prevails since forever, and it's just without actually thinking about whether or not this is a good idea to do something, people have always been doing it. So whenever someone else sees it, they just think, oh, this guy's pretty experienced, and so I'm going to repeat the same thing and it's going to be good. So yeah, those we just tried to maybe shed some light on some of these myths and see if they're true or not.
See, that's a perfect tie-in to the technique. The hardest technique is to unlearn the technique type thing. That seems to me to be would fit right in that line of discussion, right?
I actually have to take a note here and write that down so I don't forget it. Okay. But that's actually really interesting.
My favorite video of yours, of course, is the one where you look at the thumbnail and it's you holding a glass of wine, and it's all about contrast. And so I work with a mentor from a Facebook group called Ever Your Metal. They've been amazing, but the number one thing they told me was that I was afraid of contrast, and I kind of thought they were full of shit. And I'm like, I'm not afraid of contrast, but it turns out they're right. Apparently, I was afraid of contrast, or probably still am. Did you have any advice for people to kind of break out of that fear? Because I always look at something and go, oh, I went too far. And I show it to my mentor and they're like, you're not even a third of the way there.
So what I'm hearing from that is, or what I'm guessing I hear from that is that you are in love with your gradients. You like your
Probably.
gradients smoothly.
Well, I like them smooth. I don't necessarily know if I can execute them smooth.
You would like them to be smooth. Let's put it
Yes.
that way. Because I think that's the number one trade-off that you have to do is between contrast and smooth layers. Okay, because if you have something that is 3 millimeters wide, how do you make sure that everything is smooth? You're trying to apply 17 layers onto that. But 5 layers in, you are already at the end. There's not much more space left. Does that make sense? So
Yeah, it does, and I think that's where I struggle with. It's hard to explain, but I think and I know, and this is a big thing, and I don't mean to cross artists in this because this is about you, but this is one of the big things that the Banshee also talks about, because he always blows up pictures of people's miniatures and says, "There's no smoothness here." But when you hold it at your arm's length, it looks beautifully blended and smooth. And I just can't, I don't know how to break out of that mentality that when I'm up on the miniature looking at it, it's not smooth. So then I get frustrated. And then of course, in 3mm area, you're trying to put 17 layers, and you're absolutely right. It's stupid to do that because it's just not going to work because there's no room. But so it's interesting to me that I just don't know how to break out of that, and I don't know if if our listeners have some of those issues as well. I think they do. I know Dan does as well. We fight about this all the time, but so.
Mhm.
Yeah, what you said makes perfect sense.
It's just that there's two expectations clashing that you cannot realize in miniature painting. There's no physical way to do so. With the limitations of the colors that we have, it's acrylic paint usually. You're a little less limited with oil paints because you can also blend on very tiny spaces, but you cannot do that with layering acrylic colors over each other. There's just no way. There's physical limitations to doing that. So we have to do a thing where we are tricking our brains, or the brains of the people that look at our miniatures, into thinking, okay, there is a gradient because they want to see a gradient. And I see it all the time, and I also get a bit of hate for that when I say it, but I just really love the example of David Caldwell. I don't know how to spell his name. I always butcher.
Love his artwork too. Yeah, absolutely.
It's absolutely amazing because he also has the creativity. No, he's able to picture in his brain the different angles from where light comes, and he's just able to execute it perfectly. And people always say, "Wow, this is so smooth. How do you get it so smooth?" And I don't think he would disagree. He does not paint smooth. He just paints a lot of pixels next to each other, and your brain creates the illusion of smoothness. So he does that perfectly, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's just the perfect example for that. And yeah, I just hope people, or I wish people would drop the notion that I'm dissing him or whatever. He's just a really good example for that, where people say, wow, that's so smooth. And in reality, what he does is he's just really meticulously putting pixel next to pixel, and he lets your brain create the smoothness.
No, I think it's such an important conversation. I don't think you can have this conversation in miniature painting enough, actually, that everything we do is smoke and mirrors, right?
Mhm.
Like it's an illusion. And I think I kind of just had a mental aha moment. And I think I know why I'm kind of stuck on that. Wanting it to be smooth up to my face is because maybe I perceive, like when I paint for a competition, I perceive judges getting up in close there, like getting up really close on the miniature and looking at it and being like, this part here on this part of the face isn't smooth, this close. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that may be my mentality about, or misconception about the way people judge contests leads to that. You know what I mean? And maybe that winds up dominating my painting.
If I can expand on that, sure, just quickly.
Of course.
That's a very golden demon way of thinking,
Mhm.
where their definition of a good paint job is something that has a consistent quality across all the miniature, and a lot of the time that means you're painting smooth blends, and they are not interested in artistic value, I guess, because you cannot measure it. But when we're talking about smoothness, you can always find an error and say, okay, this paint job is not as good as that one, simply because the technique is not executed perfectly. And I guess it's hard to judge which one just speaks to you more, which one just has the wow factor because of the way that the colors are composed, or light and shadow interplays, or how a warm cold contrast is added onto it, and so on. and that is something that Benji does. That is pure artistic expression. It's, I would say, expressionism in miniature form, right?
Right.
Um, and yeah, where the other one is just trying to quantify which one is better.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the two ends of how to judge miniatures.
Right. No, absolutely. And it's, what's funny is I've never competed in a Golden Demon. I've only competed in things like the Capital Palette at the Nova Open, for example, which has a tendency to be more on the artistic side than it does on the technical side. So it's kind of a weird conundrum for me. Now, when we first started talking this afternoon, we had started talking a little bit about kind of the balancing painting, YouTube, social media, and all that stuff, and how that works. I'm really kind of curious as to how, as somebody who's trying to balance doing a podcast and painting and doing the social media, etc. I'm kind of curious as to how you handle it, and if you have any thoughts on what's more important than the other thing, etc.
Yeah, so right now I'm not in a good spot with everything. I'm at a point in my life, I guess, where my heart tells me to just drop everything and just do the miniature stuff. But I'm also 39, and I guess I have the voice of reason telling me to just continue to be a teacher, because I'm also good at that. And it's a solid income, steady income, and if you follow that route, you're good. But at the other hand, I just hit 500 patrons yesterday, and I didn't even notice.
Congratulations!
Thanks. And it's absolutely unbelievable, because I did not think it possible even like maybe 5 months ago. Not speaking about 2 years ago. I think I was at 40 2 years ago. But I also did not have a teacher job, so it was more like, well, damn, I cannot do what I studied to. Yeah, what I studied, I cannot teach at a school, because there's no open spots. There's just too many teachers in Austria. So I might as well do that other thing, because I can't do anything else anyway. And then it just exploded, and it's at a point where I can make a solid living off of it, but do I drop everything else? So right now I do both. I teach for 2 days, full days. It's like start at 8 and stop at 7 p.m. ish. Today I got off earlier because of COVID and how distance learning works, but usually I would still be at school. So those days I cannot do anything. I just come home and go to bed. So those are days where I cannot do any content, and then I have to prepare those 2 days, which is just half of another day lost. So I do both the YouTube content and the Patreon content in like 2.5 days. That usually means like 6 to 8 videos a month in just, I cannot do the math.
That's okay.
4 to maybe 16 days.
Well, it
Crazy.
sounds to me actually the equation might be coffee plus all this work equals no little sleep.
Yeah. So I don't know. I definitely know it's not sustainable. But I also don't know what to do.
I feel it's but I will say the content hasn't suffered because the quality of your work has been fantastic. Actually, your videos are even getting better and better, which is also impressive too. So, well, whatever you're doing well.
Thanks. Yeah. So one thing that has suffered is maybe the amount of PDFs I was able to do. I really like to do just written guides too. And I cannot properly do these anymore.
Right.
And
Well, yeah. I mean, that's a tough one though too, because that's you know, I don't know. Yeah, the balance just sounds so like between doing video content, then you have YouTube content, then you have PDFs, and then you teach. How do you sleep, man?
mm, I do sleep enough. I just, for some reason, because back in the days, I always used to stay up till 3, 4 in the morning and just work during that, during nighttime a lot. I just found out that just getting up at 5, there was a time when I just got up at 4. Then it was 5. Now I can't do it anymore because I just need to sleep. So it's weird when I do videos. I can get up at 4 in the morning and work to 6 p.m. maybe. That's when my girlfriend comes home, and then we just spend the afternoon. And then I go to bed at like 10, 11 p.m. And then I get up again after like 6 hours of sleep, and that's fine. But when I'm at school, a work day of 8 hours, it almost makes you want to take the other day off because you're so wasted. But yeah, just video making is not stressful at all to me, even if I have deadlines. It's more like a hobby. And yeah, and teaching is just because there's so many interactions, and it's not just about teaching. It's also about, could you please sit down? Could you please shut up and listen? And why did you not do that? And I need to contact your parents. And so that's really tedious work that you don't have to do when you teach painting.
Right. No, that's very true. There's nobody, no letters home about.
Mhm. You didn't do your 200 layers. You only painted 190. I have to contact your parents.
Right. And Johnny's going to have to stay after school today.
Yeah.
For sure. That's it. It's pretty
Stop
funny.
eating the paint, please.
Right. Right. I actually was just thinking about the brush lookers of the world, right? You know, that would put a new dynamic into that conversation for sure. I do want to know that one thing we kind of hinted on a little bit, and you'd mentioned David Cowell as well. Are there any other artists out there that you find inspiration in, that or artists that you kind of are your go-to artists?
Yeah, I always hate that question because it's
Boy, I'm on a roll here. Good questions here. Well, we
no,
don't have.
it's mainly because I don't have a memory for that stuff.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, that was a cool artwork. I'll just store in my brain the idea that is behind it and not so much who did it. And that's maybe not giving people enough credit, but that's just how my brain works.
Sure.
But I mean, in the past, and it's a French name, and I'm going to butcher it. It's Alain Carrasco. Does he ring a bell at all?
Actually, it does. I'm trying to place it, but
Yeah, that's the early 2000s to maybe 2010. Then he didn't paint anymore. He just sculpted. I mean, when I say just, he's absolutely amazing sculptor too, right? But
mhm.
I guess just the French style from the early 2000s was really influential. So there's a couple of names there.
Well, you mentioned sculpting. That's another. We haven't even touched on that as far as what you've done. And I've watched the Joker, and I've seen the Tracer that you did, which is just mind blowing. When did you make the decision that you wanted to start to sculpt? How did you get into sculpting? If you don't mind sharing that with our listeners.
To me, it was a bit of a natural progression. First, you start painting other people's miniatures, and you try to do the best with what is there. And then you feel like, okay, that pose is a bit off. And if I just balanced it this way and just changed how this arm is, where this arm is pointing, where you want to do a more dramatic pose. And so you cut up these metal minis, because back then they were still metal.
Right.
To do the best you can with repositioning that arm, keeping as much intact as possible, because you would have to sculpt stuff otherwise. But yeah, eventually I just realized, okay, if I just sculpt the whole arm from scratch, then who cares about repositioning?
Right.
Yeah. So, and then eventually I just said, okay, I kind of don't like any of the styles that are around at the moment, so I might as well just do my own miniatures and do or sculpt the miniatures, sculpt exactly the miniatures that I want to paint. Yeah, and then that was just a progression from doing tiny things, purity seals and stuff like that, just add-ons, repositioning, and then eventually doing full figures. And then there was another progression, I guess, where I didn't see any need to sculpt feet on all of my, or legs and feet on all of my miniatures, because I can do character study with just showing the upper body and most of all the face. And yeah, so I went from figure sculpting into just bust sculpting, because I feel like it was a more artistic medium in that miniature realm.
And I have to admit, I originally, when I first started seeing, I think the first ones I saw were like by Ouroboros Miniatures, where they had the CP New Skin thing, where it was just kind of from the thighs up. But I was kind of like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. Then I see things like the Joker and that you did, and I'm like, okay, actually, I actually like those. Who cares about feet, anyways? Those are those are
All the
awesome.
people that care about feet, let me tell you that much.
But you can't mention feet. You can't show feet on Twitter or Twitch, right? That's like,
yeah, that's why I quit streaming on Twitch.
Right. I remember having the conversation with Sam Lenz. I was sending him a model to paint, and he's like, it's got a breast and it's showing bare feet, so I can't paint it. I'm like, wait, the first one I understood. The second one I don't get. That's okay. So let's talk about all the different mediums you are on, because I want to make sure our listeners know where they can find you. So you have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are all Trovarion, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the Patreon, they have
Same.
different levels that they can. It's the same name, and there's different levels that they can sign up for, correct?
Yeah. So
Awesome.
I mean, the $1 and $2 pledges are like, okay, you like the free video content, and you just want to throw me $1 or $2, and that also gives you access to the Discord. It's a patron only Discord, and the other two pledges are just PDF and video pledges, and then there's the feedback pledges. So those are a bit more expensive.
Was that, and you said feedback pledges? Is that what you said? Okay, fantastic. And I think Dan did a couple of video sessions with you at one point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't usually know the names. I just go by the screen names and what they use on Discord.
Yeah, so, I can't lie. He's got like 6 different names, so I wouldn't even know which one to tell you. But he's a man of mystery for sure. So what down the road, where do you see yourself kind of going with the channel? Is there anything that you want to get into that you haven't done yet?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So, I mean, the one thing that is clear is that I'm going to do the videos as long as I can. And that means as long as I physically can. And I don't know if people want to see a 60-year-old man on YouTube. So that's the only thing that worries me. But then again, there's channels like, I don't know, let's stop that. Let's not go there. But so I'm always going to do videos. The only thing that I have to figure out within the next year is whether or not I want to go all in.
Mhm.
But there's always going to be as much content as I can do without losing too much sleep. So I just want to go down that route and see where it goes.
So
Yeah.
one of the fun questions I like to ask artists is if there was a miniature that hasn't been made yet that you would like to see made. And I always use the example of I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and I would love to see the characters from the Dark Tower series come to life in miniature form and paint those. Is there anything like out there like that you'd be interested in seeing?
Yeah. So I gotta admit, nothing really comes to mind that is pop culture. And I think that's a bit of a miniature problem as a whole, because it's really hard to sell figures that are not borderline IP infringement and copies of popular stuff. So any original content kind of gets lost by the wayside, even though they're really cool concepts and sculpts. But yeah, I just really would like to continue my own line of miniatures, which is a bit of a grittier version of future, like a war torn and how do you say, ecological wasteland type of thing.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Like a post, you have a thing for the kind of post-apocalyptic kind of dark future.
Yep.
Like now, do you see yourself liking something like a cyberpunk type post-apocalyptic, or more just kind of these are extreme contrasts, but like kind of a cyberpunk versus a Walking Dead type situation?
Yeah, interesting question. So with Nico Galaxy, for example, there is it's not limited to them, but I cannot think of any other manufacturer that does it. But there's a couple of them out right now that do the more cyberpunk stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they
I
do
love
it.
their stuff. They have some great busts. It's just incredible.
Yeah, they do it rather well. So I think that niche is covered. I kind of would like to do my own thing. I guess that is kind of cyberpunky, but yeah, influenced by different cultures. So I want to do like high technology, pitched against, you know, purely robot designs, pitched against more tribal stuff, and all of them kind of influencing each other. So that's what I would like to do.
That's very cool. That's actually a great idea. I'm going to wish you luck on that, because I would like to see and purchase those miniatures. So,
Thank you.
so you'd have a supporter here for sure.
Yeah, maybe I'll just try to pour whatever tiny amount of time I have left at the end of the day into a couple of figure concepts, and then just gradually make them, and then eventually do a Kickstarter or something like that. That would be the ideal approach to that.
Well, now that you're part of the Listening to Paint Dry family, keep us informed for sure, because we'll definitely make announcements for you and put it out on all our social media anytime even if you have any kind of regular announcements. Just say, hey, I've got some new videos that I want people to check out. We'll definitely push for you for sure.
Okay. So
But,
that's 6 new videos each month that you're going to have to announce.
well, we only come out twice a month, so it's a little bit easier.
Well, 12 videos then in one episode, so that's good too.
There you go. So the motto of our podcast is better, braver, and happier. Do you have any advice that you could give to our listeners to keep them on that journey?
Yeah. So thinking about that, I would like to scratch better, because like we mentioned earlier, it conveys the idea that you can put two miniatures next to each other, and then you can quantify which one is better. And I mean, I guess you could do that if you just put the miniature by someone who just started painting next to the miniature of someone who's been painting like 20 years. Obviously, you're going to see a difference. but the other two resonate better with me because I think ultimately what makes people unhappy, and we touched on that earlier, is if they don't like something themselves. So they should try to be brave and just try to find their own way. And if they are unhappy with something, obviously it means you have to change something. So but you also have to be brave to change that thing and go down a different route that is maybe not known terrain. So it's the great unknown. But if you are brave enough to go that route, ultimately you're also going to be happier and just completely forget about better or not. The only thing I guess I would let count is that you're trying to be better than you were yesterday, but don't really compare yourself to others. It doesn't make sense because they might be looking for something completely different than you're looking for, and copying them and trying to achieve the same thing might not make you happy. I guess
Perfect.
that's my take on that.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect, and that's one of the things we always stress is that everybody's painting journey is a personal journey. Don't. It's great to look for inspiration, but not for comparison. For sure.
Yeah, to get new ideas, and you might find an idea that you like, but you might just slightly want to tweak that, and there you go. You're on your own path again. But it's something you wouldn't have thought of if you didn't look at that other person's work. Yeah.
Right. That's fantastic. Yeah, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And again, it's been an honor to have a conversation with you about painting little toys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Dan and I would like to thank Trovarion for joining us and sharing his painting journey. You can follow him on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Paint and Putty, and YouTube by searching for Trovarion. You can also learn from him on Patreon. Please, we do encourage you. Dan has been a part of this Patreon and loved it. So please check it out, support the artist. You can also check the show notes for all of the links.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Listening to Paint Dry, or on Twitter at Dry Painting. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Listening to Paint Dry, or on Twitter at Dry Painting. We also have a YouTube channel, which is apparently called Listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan. Give it a look. I don't know what you're going to see. Please like, subscribe, or follow us wherever you get your podcast, which now includes Amazon, which I think we did a couple months ago. If you could leave us a good review, that would be really, really cool and help out the show to get us to 3 listeners.
I think we might actually be at 4. But anyway,
4?
You can also drop us an email at listeningtopaintdry@gmail.com. Yeah, 4 listeners. I know, we're outrageous.
Sweet.
So just worry about what you can control to become a better, braver, happier painter. Until next time.
See ya.
Listening to Paint Dry with Mike and Dan is a production of LTPTWMD. All rights reserved. No portion of this recording may be used without the express written consent of the host. The music is Death by a Thousand Questions by Springtide. Download from the Free Music Archive on a non-commercial attribution share-alike basis. All views and opinions expressed in the show are solely the views and opinions of the person who said them. All celebrity voices, if any, were impersonated and done so poorly.